Thank you all for joining the panel discussion today in honor of International Women's Day. We are discussing some of the most pressing issues today for women in business: diversity, action, and being heard. I'm joined today by Tina, Signe, Claire, and Mette. Thank you all so much for being here. With an increasing number of well-known organizations appointing female CEOs, the growth of women in leadership positions seems to be on the rise. In fact, women running Fortune 500 businesses today is higher than at any point since the Fortune 500 has been created. However, when we put it in context, this is still only 6.4% of these leading companies. So when we look at tech and the maritime sector, which seem to be more male-dominated industries, what are some of the challenges that you see that we face, and how do we overcome them?
Well, there's a lot of challenges out there, but I'd like to actually start on a day like the International Women's Day to say that I believe it's never been a better time to be a young, ambitious woman, girl even, because there are so many possibilities, and a lot of companies across the world also, as you say, the tech industry and the shipping industry are very keen to get female talent in. A lot of companies are beginning now to focus on how to achieve balanced leadership, because the evidence is there now why this is important. Just 5 to 10 years ago, it wasn't exactly the same. You had to constantly present the business plan of why it matters. So I think the challenges that are out there now is more the how. We are talking to a lot of companies also within these two industries, but also beyond that are sort of now looking at what does a diversity inclusion journey look like, and how do you actually manage to achieve to get a more balanced talent pipeline. Actually, to be provocative, but the main thing I see that's lacking across all industries is investment. So lots of tools, lots of training, lots of things are out there, but companies, a little bit like the climate debate about 10, 20 years ago, nice to have, need to have, same with CSR. And now it's really becoming important when we are talking gender diversity to also put the money where the mouth is.
Yeah, I highly agree with Signe. What I see and what I hear is also that diversity is on most agenda already. So that's not really where the battle is, but it's more about how. And what I see is that there are 3 main points. First of all, it's about role models and having mentors for women to actually wanting to enter this scene in either a tech role or a leadership role. The second one that I see is demystifying those areas of roles or industries which are primarily male-dominated. There are a lot of really interesting things in those industries and roles that can also appeal to women, but most women are unaware of that. And the last one, which is the most important one when it comes to companies, small or big, is to ensure an inclusive culture. So one can ask themselves, does our company culture and work environment appeal to women or other groups that we want to attract to create a diverse workforce?
I think seeing now how we work in this is we hear a lot of the women's perspective. I think there's a lot of women out there who really have the ambitions but are lacking the role models, and they don't really see where their place is and how to get where they want, because there's really lacking role models, or they're not being highlighted well enough. So I think I can really see that it's happening now, and we are highlighting a lot of role models, and there are a lot of great initiatives that are really, I think, sparking a fire in a lot of women who really now can see that they can get places. But it's still something that needs to be a focus on, and showing the way and leading the way for women who really are ambitious and want to do great things.
So from my point of perspective, I think coming from the tech industry, now working within shipping, I feel that a lot of industries are still very conservative in the way they're approaching the candidates. And as you also, all of you talked about the role models, there are only few of them. So if you don't have the knowledge of a certain industry, you don't know where to look. And my experience is that if you combine and get inspiration from different industries, you can actually attract a larger pool of women.
I think it's really interesting because the tech industry is known for being forward-thinking and wants to change the world, and yet it's still a male-dominated industry. And I wonder, Signe, if you can talk a little bit, since you're on the board of Women in Tech, how are you guys seeing that? Is it changing? Where are we today, and how long will it take before the change actually can take hold, where it's more balanced?
Yes, thank you, Lora. So both yes and no. It's quite interesting because when we look into the universities, for example, ITU, we can see that more and more women are actually applying for development titles or roles at the university, and there is like a tendency for more women to look into these studies that are more hardcore development. However, if we look into women already working in the tech industry, there's actually a report stated from Ancher last year that 50% of all women in their mid-30s leave the tech industry. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is the work environment. So it's also about what kind of environment are we actually creating for women to work in? Is it something that's also relating to their aspirations as a family person? And for that, the tech industry has just been a bit more hardcore than other industries, for reasons I don't really comprehend yet. So it's kind of both yes and no. There are more women seeking into tech roles and into the tech industry, but there are also a lot of women leaving it in the mid of their career, at the beginning of their career.
Mm. Tina, you mentioned that there is an investment that's needed. And I'm curious to know what Signe is talking about, that people are leaving. Are you finding this across different sectors? Because your organization deals with not only shipping and maritime, but more of a global organization.
Yes, and it is rather complex, everything we're talking about now, because there's so many different tendencies at the same time, and even globally. There's a lot of, there's quite a movement going on, which I think is super exciting. And I'm trying to do my part to make sure that in Denmark, we're not left behind. So, for example, when we're looking at the young women in the universities in our country, a couple of numbers for you. Boston Consulting Group did some research where they found out that 60% of the leaders in Denmark today actually have STEM background. Typically engineering, a lot of the top CEOs we have in Denmark. However, when we look at these kind of educations in our country, only 30% of the students are today women. And exactly as you just said, Signe, of course, when we're talking about computer technology and all of this, there's the numbers are even lower. And there's also, I know, issues within the engineering field that I saw some statistics the other day that even as soon as they graduate, the women that are studying engineering, 25% already from the beginning do never end up in an engineering job. So there's something about us not using the talents and the potential out there, which I think is so frustrating, because of course all companies are doing much better when the entire talent pool are being approached and attracted and are actually nurtured to grow and contribute to the company. However, just very briefly, one thing I wanted to say in all of this, and the reason why I say it's so complex, we work on something called triple transformation. We in our company work a lot to help companies and to improve the workplaces to be, the preferred workplaces of the future, so to speak. But you can do a lot at work. But when we talk triple transformation, if you're not also trying to actually move the structural barriers in society and the mindset of society, the values of your culture, and at the same time, which is the third leg, look at family issues and make sure that in the partnership you have at home with a man or a woman, that you actually are looking at who has the abilities, the education, share, of course, the chores and the joys of the kids, but even at a sort of family level, that your mother and father are equally inspiring the son and the daughter to become ambitious, a leader, play with Lego and all the rest. There's so much to go to actually try to progress. So we talk about work, society, and family. Triple transformation all around will make a difference pretty much for all workplaces out there when you're talking about a gender balance.
Has there been conversations around how COVID has impacted their companies and their lives, and maybe yours at Nuuday?
Yes, but not always in a good way. So actually in tech, it's been more of the norm that you could work from anywhere, because working with technology also ensures that you have the right technology for communication. So for example, I used to work for Cisco, and in Cisco, it was the norm that you work from anywhere. So I was rarely at the office. So for me, this is kind of everyday life. It was more when I entered into Nuuday, part of TDC, where it was a bit more old school. You had to be at the desk every day from 9 to 5. They are definitely looking into a change, and a lot of companies are looking into a change. A lot of companies are actually asking their employees, what's good for you? How would you like to structure your workday? So I more see technology being an enabler. We have become better using the software that's available for communication to structure something that works for people, no matter your gender or your background, but that works for you in the situation that you are in.
Yeah.
Actually, what I have seen when it comes to COVID is that a lot of women have stepped a bit back, especially those women having families, because they tend to take more care of the chores in-house. So a lot of them actually looked into a stressful period. I see that from my colleagues as well. So there's kind of been both pros and cons with the whole COVID and the way it affected our work behavior.
I'm curious to explore a little bit more about, this hiring, and how do we perhaps write job ads that are more female friendly, and also in the hiring process, that we have this unconscious bias that's a big topic right now. And Tina, maybe there's something within your organization above and beyond that kind of talks about this unconscious bias. So I'd like your input, and maybe Mette's input as well.
Yeah, well, it's actually something that we are helping a lot of companies with. So we're doing a lot of webinars and online training and so on. And what's really important for people to understand is that something like unconscious bias is not something you fix overnight. And it's actually something that the brain has and does in order to sort of instantly, within a split second, decide when you have someone in front of you if it's a friend or a foe. It goes all the way back to the caveman kind of thing. Will we be eaten, or is this a friendly situation? So it sounds crazy. And when I say this and speak to CEOs at conferences and so on, I mean, people don't like the data, but it's as close to 90 or even 98, 99% of our decisions are unconscious, which is insane. When you look at top management salaries, for example, and you say that it's unconscious decision making, but it's just the way we're wired, and things have happened so quickly in the evolution the last 100 years, just to look at that. But the brain is still ready for things that happened thousands of years ago. So we haven't actually moved. So basically, coming back to what you say about job ads, just what kind of photo? I mean, if we're in shipping, if you're looking for some, direct and transformation or something like that, and you show an image of a huge tanker, you might as well actually choose a slightly different image of 2-3 colleagues, male, female, standing in a corridor discussing something exciting with your job ad. And just that unconsciously will attract more women than the big tanker will. So there's like little tweaks that can be done. It's of course also in the wording. You have more masculine, feminine words. We are some women, including myself, I know, that are, I like performance. There's a lot of things in me that's quite masculine, even though I have the long hair. So I might be attracted to an ad that has a lot of commercial terms, but someone else may not. So it's actually really important to make them as, of course, interesting as possible, these job ads, but neutral. And there's software and so on that does that too. But just coming back to the thing about, and I think it was you saying it, Signe, or it was Mette, having an inclusive workplace where women, men, foreigners, young, old, and so on, because there's many facets of diversity, are respected, can come to work without covering up, being themselves. That is really what makes everyone develop the best and perform to the best of their ability. And that is really important. And I think especially the more male-dominant conservative industries, there's quite a lot out there. It's really important that it's anchored at the top. So we work a lot with CEOs and boards and so on, that they actually say to the entire organization, this is the way forward, even in terms of sexism and so on. We can go into that debate also if you want. You know, it's just not tolerated. It's basically zero tolerance, and not be afraid of that, because of course all of us and the next generation, I have 3 daughters, I want them to come to the office and be treated well, of course, and full of respect.
What are some initiatives that you are doing at Women in Tech to help bring more women into the tech sector?
So in Women in Tech, we have several initiatives. For example, we have our Momenta program, which I'm actually starting the 2nd year of next week. And that goes hand in hand with what most of you have been talking about role models and mentors. When we started it off last year, there were like very few applicants, but this year it's been exploding. There are a lot of women who really want to have a role model or a mentor to spar with. Now, another thing we do is that we actually use our SoMe channels, especially Instagram, for takeover profiles, where we have females working in different tech roles and in tech companies, just showing their day, because that kind of adds into demystifying the industry or the roles that they're having. And a lot of people are having good questions for them and really enjoys these kind of peeking into the different industries and careers. Secondly, or thirdly, we also have events. We have some sponsorships, and we help our sponsors creating events for them, for raising their tech profiles or to raise their question or their search for more diversity. So, for example, one of our sponsors, we have created a small Women in Tech chapter within their company. So each quarter, they have a focus on a different area within the company that's very technical, where they have some female role models to talk about what they do, to, again, demystify it a bit. Then we have our Slack community, which is kind of living its own life, but a place where people can ask questions, and there are job applications and different things. So we're trying to spread around different channels.
Yeah, I think I'm part of the Slack channel, and I find it extremely easy to communicate with everyone in the organization. So I love that initiative by you. I also think using social media is really exciting, and events that are very open. And Claire, Women in Shipping has really taken Denmark by storm and had thousands of women come in and join your organization because of your motto of, everyone's welcome. Can you talk a little bit more about your initiative and how that is making shipping fun and exciting for women to be part of?
Yeah, I think, it all started with that I'm the only woman in my office, and I thought it was a little bit strange that I didn't really know the other women in the industry, and I didn't really, only, a few friends I had privately that I knew, but I didn't know any women. So I think this all came about that I really wanted to know some women and have a network that wasn't only men, because I see how great men are at using each other and helping each other up the corporate ladder. And I just feel like I fell a little bit behind in my career without having women to support and having women supporting me. And I think the events that we're hosting, we're inviting women in, we're having topics, but a big thing is, or a big part of it is the social aspect of it, getting to know each other and helping each other and connecting. And we've really seen a lot of friendships blossom, and it's really, really nice to see, and it's becoming like a whole community where the women help out each other, and I think that's great. but of course it's been super hard this year. So we've also focused, like Signe, we focused a lot on social media as well, and we also do takeover on our Instagram, but we also do this Women's Crush Wednesday where we highlight one woman's career and about where she started and her education and what's her biggest tips and what she's learned and so on. So we try to highlight and celebrate a woman every other week on LinkedIn and Instagram as well.
Yeah, I think it's so important for women to support other women in their journey and their careers. So I, applaud what you guys are doing. I know that Signe actually probably has to leave us. I wonder if you just wanted to, wrap things up before you leave us, and then we'll continue on.
Yeah, there's one thing. I actually discussed this with some friends yesterday who are also women working in tech roles or within the tech industry. A lot of them didn't go for an education that propped them up for this, but they discovered it along the way that they wanted to pursue a career within this. So we're talking about the importance of after schooling, actually, for companies to allow after schooling for women who want to pursue another career. I think that's highly important. Besides that, I really just stick to it's super important to have role models. So if you want to attract more diversity within your company, you need to look for role models to highlight within your company. Ask them what works and what needs to change in order to attract more. Encourage them to become mentors and poster girls, as I call them, someone to really promote what they're doing. And again, demystifying what they are doing within their roles or what's going on in your industry. As Claire mentioned, deep dive into what are they actually working with and how did they get there. And in the end, really take a check on your culture. Is it inclusive? Do it kind of create a baseline for a diverse workforce, or do you need to change something?
Yeah, fantastic. Those are really good tips. And I appreciate you being with us today. Sorry that you have to leave early, but we will connect with you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and have a lovely weekend when you get there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I want to just talk a little bit more. Maybe I can be a little provocative. Coming from the US, we had something called affirmative action, which President Kennedy brought about in the 60s. In Europe, I guess they call it more positive action. Now, Tina, do you think that governments need to be involved in order to create what we need to create a balance in diversity, or how are we going to create this balance?
Well, it's a very important question. I've worked quite a bit in the Middle East recently, even in Saudi and so on. And what's interesting, of course, they have a slightly different governmental reign than we have here in Denmark, for example. However, when they decide something, it just becomes a decree and then it happens. So they have actually started now putting rules in that you need to have minimum one woman at every board and so on and so forth. So some of these countries are actually moving very fast right now. Dubai, the same. They're putting like a 50-50 mesh on their government. A lot of female ministers coming forward and so on. So there are things that the government can do. And as I said before, with the triple change, the societal values and what's happening in our work environments are very much regulated by the government. So yes, there are ways that you can earmark, for example, paternity leave. There's many different things that can be done. I just had a quick comment about, you talked about the pipeline before, and we work a lot about the talent pipeline and trying to actually strengthen that, because statistically speaking, there's two areas of the sort of career pyramid. Already at the very first stage, when women leave university, there's a huge, what we call the brain drain. So the pipeline is leaking, which is a waste of resources again, and a shame. And then further up, when what McKinsey calls is sort of like you have the women being the only one, they're leaking again, and typically even starting their own companies or something like that, because they're the only woman around the table. So those two places, we have actually created some cross-industry programs, because this is an issue that many industries want to solve. And typically you're looking at your own industry, tech or shipping, pharma or whatever, in a bit of a silo and thinking this is a problem that we only have, but it's across the board. So we have developed the Above and Beyond Academy, where we do these leadership programs, a fast track intense week for the young emerging managers, and an advanced leadership program all the way for senior women. And we're often asked, oh, this is 2021. Is it really necessary with women's only programs? And there's even women who don't want to be on these programs. But this is not about fixing the women. They are actually receiving like amazing lectures by Harvard professors, INSEAD and everything else. It's not at all about fixing the women. It's about fixing the pipeline. So back to investments again. It's just everybody has finite resources. So if you have a lot of senior men, but you're lacking women, then it's about really making sure that you retain, I'm disappearing in the dark here apparently. It's about really making sure that you retain the fantastic female talents you already have, instead of losing them. So you need to make sure you motivate them, inspire them, and further develop them so that you actually have them further up the pipeline so that you can promote them.
We're almost running out of time. I just want to address one last question, which, Tina said something about it's not about fixing women and this education or investment that's needed. How do we actually get rid of the unconscious bias where there's more acceptance of women on their management teams? And maybe this is not necessarily a male-female thing, but I feel like there needs to be balance within, there's a talent pool of women who actually don't need the education. They just need the opportunity. So maybe we can just wrap up by talking about that.
Pretty much all of us, including myself that took my MBA like 20 years ago, we all need to be up qualified. All the HR people we're dealing with at the moment, they're like really struggling with agility, resilience, remote leadership skills, digitalization. There's so much going on out there. That's basically skills that are not normally in business schools like just 5 years ago. So education is very important, but you're absolutely right. And just beyond gender, there's the diversity of thought that we all bring to the table, no matter if you're introvert, extrovert, man or woman. So I think there's also Barbara Annis has written a brilliant book, a couple of books actually, about gender intelligence. So yes, men and women have different brains. We talk differently, we think differently, and so on. So this is all about bringing a diverse view on everything we do, especially decision making. So I think also one thing, even in the conversation today, I'm being provocative again, but I think it's so important in the whole diversity, inclusion, and gender diversity agenda that we are not just talking about challenges, because there's a lot of them, but also the potential. There's so much potential today. And I think actually globally, there's a huge movement. There's a lot to be said about STEM. We also do a whole campaign called Lead the Future on role models in STEM. But if you look at Russia, China, India, the young women out there, they're actually seeking all these educations pretty much 50-50 with the guys, because they know that's where the jobs are. Whereas in the Nordics, for example, there's so much choices and education is for free that women are, I'm generalizing, but I can see in the statistics, typically girls want to do something with people and boys want to do something with things and objects and tech. So, it's also about making sure that we motivate the young women out there in school, in our companies, to think big, to change the world, because the potential is there. And I think, Claire, I know what you do very well with women in shipping, which is brilliant, but you bring a lot of men on stage too. So we need to all talk together as women, be in programs together, but always include the men in the conversation. They were the ones giving us voting rights 100 years ago. We need to involve them in this decision in bringing us up further in the workplace. Really important to do it together.
I absolutely concur with, what you said, that we are not going to do this with women alone. This is a journey that men and women take together. I also really like what you said about women need to think big to change the world. Growing up in the Silicon Valley, that was just innate within, how I was brought up. But when you look at the statistics, and it's actually quite young, around third grade, where where you have to get to young girls and teach them STEM education before that point, so they have that interest that, you know, isn't about them just wanting to work with people, but also working with STEM and things and technology. So I think that we have to start very young if we're going to, you know, change this in societies where there are a lot of options.
So now actually we're going to open it up to questions from our audience on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions for any of our panelists on diversity, action, being heard, anything that you've heard today, we would love to hear from you. And thank you so much to my guests joining us today in this really thought-provoking panel discussion in honor of International Women's Day.